My wife would go like this, don't tell him that, don't tell him that. Well, I could say it all started when I was probably 14 or 15, when we got our first game for like $75 at Crisscross Gottlieb. It was just for fun to play, and it was something neat, mechanical thing. And somehow the game worked pretty well. And a couple times some switches didn't work. We went in there and fiddled with it and got it to work, really not knowing what we were doing. We didn't know even understand the principle of an end of stroke switch and a flipper. We're just kids, just playing games, and the pinball works. And those machines worked pretty well, because keep in mind, when we got involved with them, they weren't that old. Crisscross was, but Pretty Baby was another one of my early games. And my uncle opened up a campground and boat dock down in Tennessee. And he says, we want to put games in there. Can you find some games? So we went out and found some pinball machines and a couple of old mechanical type games. And then there was a vending guy that was down there too. He had his jukebox in the place, and he had a video game called Biplane. But he didn't want to really get involved with pinball machines. So I bought my uncle a couple pinball machines with Spanish eyes. And we kind of sort of kept them working. So working enough where they were taking in, a quarter, and 50 cents, you got 3 games, one of those deals. Still wasn't really that fascinated with it. But I think in 79 was the changeover year for me. So Boat Dock was running from 73, 74 up till 70, 79, when suddenly I realized the video games came out, the boom started. And that really got us involved, and went out and bought a couple brand new games from the local distributor, Eastern Music in Philadelphia, and that started it. I started putting them in locations. All the good locations were already taken up. I couldn't get them in good locations. I got the so-so or awful locations, but it was something magical and fascinating about opening up the cash drawer and seeing all these quarters, and they were all mine. Of course, it takes a long time to pay the game off, doesn't it? Yeah, so I can tell you that I probably only half the machines I purchased that I actually got my money back. And that's before you start making money. That's really the truth. But I was bitten at that point with the money angle, not the collecting angle, the money angle, and the fascination. And people were always fascinated when we lifted up a pinball playfield. They always wanted to look inside and see what was in it. They wanted to see what was in the back of a video game when you're in there fiddling with a monitor. Now, those days, when the monitor went out, you took the chassis out, or the whole monitor, and took it to the distributor. And they ended up changing usually one part, and it was 88 cents, and then the bill for the service was $85. So it was $86 plus tax. I said, oh man, and it was just one part, and many of the parts were capacitors. And back then the capacitors were dying, and these games were pretty new. So the cap kit does solve a lot of issues these days. So I started buying pinball. My first new pinball, actually I had some old ones first. Close Encounters was one. Cleopatra, I had one of them. I had a Sinbad. My first brand new pinball was Trizone. It was being closed out for $12.99, the lowest price a digital game had ever sold for, because the new talking Gorgar had just come out. But Gorgar was a few hundred more. So in my infinite wisdom, I bought the Trizone, and it did make money. I did make my money back. But I remember the first time, after so many plays and so much money, one of the slide targets didn't work. I couldn't figure out what it was. Back then, there was nobody teaching you. And I finally kept taking the target apart and found that little horseshoe had broken on the target that slides up and down. And I had to figure out where to order one. In the meantime, I came up with some way of making it work. so that people could still play the game. They instantly got points, even with the target going up and down. They always got that N. It was the letter N. I never shared that story with anybody since the first time. So I'm sharing it with you now, aren't I? I started buying more and more games, putting them in stores and locations. And then I had I worked at Temple University too. That was my full-time job. And a professor knew I was involved with the arcade games at Temple University. I was running the game rooms there. And those games were being operated on a percentage basis between Temple and another company, not me. He said, how about, do you need money? We can become partners and buy more games. I'm thinking, wow, that's a great idea. Now, this would have been like 82. And I opened up my first full arcade in New Hope, Pennsylvania, in a little tourist town. And the man that owned the ice cream store there, God bless his heart, Bob Grenzer, is no longer with us. But he had his own games there, and they were breaking. And my partner went in there and said, we're going to put all new games in here, and we're going to make money. And that was my first arcade. And I bought a lot of new games for him. Then they eventually got rotated out to other locations. And that's where I also operated pinball machines. We tried to operate pinballs in different areas, different locations whenever we could. Not all locations wanted them because of the flipper noise and that sort of thing. They like the video games just tucked into the back or something. So in 83, we still continued to run, but in 84, business started to really droop. And my partner and I, in the summer of 84, were saying, we are in trouble. Nothing's making any money. We got to figure out what to do. And I said, why don't we try selling this stuff? And he said, well, I mean, what do? Put an ad in the paper? I said, let's just try something for fun. And on Friday in August, I rolled 5 games out near the end of my driveway. We had a long driveway to a separate garage in the back where we kept, actually, we didn't get cars in there much. We always had, it was filled with games and other things. So I said, let's put some games out on the driveway. I'll run some power cords from the house, and I'll put a big for sale sign on. So I had a Pac-Man out there, and I think an Asteroids or something. 2 games right on the curb, pointed in 2 different directions. Now, Vary Road in Northeast Philadelphia was very busy. It was actually a snow route, a snow emergency route. So it took a lot of traffic. It was 2 lanes each direction. And you know what? We had so much traffic. Buy it. They see the games and the big for sale, $100 and up. And they slammed the brakes on. I'll tell you, we actually had, honest to God, we had one fender bender when somebody slammed the brakes on when they saw the sign. Everybody was fascinated because buy a game for their house? We had people in droves. And do you know we sold between August and December? And remember in December, we had gloves on. It was so cold. We must have sold out of that driveway over 400 machines. And people just loved them. And they were $100 and up, honest to God. Asteroids, Space Invaders, Deluxe Space Invaders was $100 and a quarter. So if it said Deluxe, it went up. But Tempest, our cheapest color game, was $2 and a quarter. Actually, no, Missile Command was our cheapest because you couldn't convert it. Nobody wanted to convert Missile Command into a Russian attack because it had that big-ass hole on the playfield, on the control panel. But we started to sell pinball machines. Pinball machines started at $300. And we didn't even put them on legs. We had them on the ground with a head on. Games like Trident. We sold Black Knight. Our starting price on that was $550. And it's only like 3 or 4 years after it was brand new. But we were selling them for $550 because it was multi-ball. See, and keep in mind, I wasn't buying, Fran and I did not buy the newer pinball machines between 83 and 84. We just stopped buying pinballs because they stopped making money too. So we had all the older stuff, things like Trident, Power Play, Genie. Actually, I got to tell you, I never shared this story. We sold a Genie to a doctor near us, and we delivered it in a van. He was a really nice guy. And he really wanted, he said, just back right up to the door, which was on his grass. And the grass was wet and we got stuck. I got stuck, the van got stuck with the mud. And I'll never forget, this doctor, God bless his heart, he was out there and he and I were covered with mud getting this van out of the back. Here he is, he's buying a game from me. Now he's helping getting me out of his yard. And do you know, he kept that genie. From the day we sold it to him, back in 80, this was about 85, 84 or 85. He had the genie, I guess right up until maybe 7 or 8 years ago. He passed away, and his wife called me and she said, would you like to buy Genie back? Isn't that something? They had them all those years. It still worked. It still worked. Oddly enough, the NiCad battery never leaked. It didn't hold a charge, but it never leaked. So I never shared that before. See, look at that. See, I keep coming up with stuff in the old head. Different memories come back. That's why it's fun to do this. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I started collecting video games, cabaret, little ones, because my wife said, I can't have any games in the house. When I got married in 93, 94. I think 94. She said, no games in the house. That was one of her stipulations. I said, oh, okay, I can live with that. I'll put them in the garage. She said, put them in the garage. It was a 2-car garage. I cleared everything out, and I packed it with full-size video games. Okay? Everything I could, fit in there. And I realized if I took a full-size game out, I could fit sometimes as many as 2 cabarets. So 2 full-size meant I could get 3 cabarets in, or maybe more. Cabaret is a smaller version of the video game. So I just mistakenly started collecting cabarets. And then when we had our first daughter, she fell in love with the game. She always wanted to go into the game room and play. And my second daughter loved playing. So I said, maybe I can find more of these things. So we started collecting cabarets, and this garage was full of arcade games. Now remember, it's detached from the house. So I bartered a Miss Pac-Man, and this man, an electrician, ran a new power wire right from the old fuse box outside underground to our garage. So I could have 100 amp service in the garage too to run all this stuff. You gotta have 40 games because we couldn't turn them all on at once. We'd blow the fuse. The garage had screw-in fuses, and the power wire coming from the house was not heavy enough to handle all the games, so we could only have 2 or 3 on at one time. Now, when we moved to the bigger house, my wife really wanted to move because of the school area. She wanted the kids to go to a better school district. I said, I'll do it, but I get the basement, the game room. It's everything in the basement's mine. And of course she said, well, wait a minute. And I said, then we don't move. Got her to sign it. She agreed that I could have full control over the basement. And she agreed to that. And she made one stipulation that I was not allowed to bring anything into the house that was not finished. That means no rusty legs. They had to look nice. I can deal with that. And that's how the collection in the house started. And then it became fun to find every cabaret. At the high point, I had 100 different dedicated cabaret arcade video games and 4 pinball machines. So that was quite something. The old days. But see, I got bitten by the cabaret bug. See, other people get bitten by the pinball bug. I mean, and when it bites, baby, it's deep. It's deep. And you just can't stop. And you can't. You find different places to put games. By the way, my wife allowed me to put a touchscreen game up on the first floor because she likes sitting there, and I always said she's booping, hitting different things and boop, boop, and, So so she did allow one game on the first floor. But it's been quite a ride, I'll tell you that. Quick numbers, if you want to hear numbers, we've sold it's hard to believe this, we've sold over 30,000 machines now to over 13,000 customers. different customers. Do you know also that I started the flat rate arcade idea? I really did. Nobody did this. I started parties in 1987. Okay, so if you do some quick math, that's 35 years ago. We would charge a flat rate for the party, and you had 2 hours of free play in our showrooms. And then we also had an area where we served food. We got a deal with a local pizza parlor for $5 a big pie, and it was an instant hit. We were booked every possible slot we could get. We had people waiting. But remember, I could only have 5 parties on Saturday and 4 on Sunday. Because generally Sunday night, no one wanted a party after 7 because it was a school night. And we were almost all, probably 98%, 99% kids. The kids loved it because of the way we could lay our showroom out with the little aisles and little doorways, because I was up to 50 people. So 25,000 parties. That's a lot of parties. We were averaging about 900 a year in and around. We also did campgrounds. And we introduced these kids, even today, to pinball, because there's nothing better than a free pinball machine. So if you think about it, how many people had their pinball machines on free play anywhere from 1987, 88, 90, 95, 2000? Did anybody do free play? No. I pretty much started it. Our party place now is on 2nd generation. Many of the people that come to our party place to play pinball and arcade games played when they were little. And now their little ones are playing there. And the parents are back too. And my favorite line is, "And we haven't cleaned the place since you were last here." That's my favorite line. So my wife would go like this, "Don't tell them that, don't tell them that. I should get an award. I should get some recognition." Come on, we're having fun. Come on. But here I am today, 66 years old, still selling games, and guess what? It's booming. Everybody says, "Where's the business going? What's going to happen next?" I said, I sure as heck don't know. I mean, I think the games are going to hold their value. Pinballs. I don't think the video games, the common ones, will hold their value. The uncommon ones, the ones nobody wanted, they're worth the big money, especially to a museum or a collector. But here we are, 2022. Still going strong. I don't know what's coming. It could be a big surprise. It could be a great surprise. Who knows? But that's why we do it. And we're having a great time doing it.